You're listening to Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast for and by Rockies fans on Rocky Mountain Rooftop. Thank you for joining us as we discuss all things baseball and Colorado Rockies. Hello and welcome to Affected by Altitude, the Colorado Rockies podcast on Rocky Mountain Rooftop, a proud affiliate of the Fans First Sports Network. I'm your host, Evan Lang, and with me, as always, is my partner in crime in the Albuquerque Isotopes hat, Skyler Timmons, and we are definitely not doing a take two of this recording because I accidentally pushed a button.
Yes, be careful of your back buttons on your mouses, people. Your mice.
Mises.
Meissen. Yes. Isotopes hat. Foreshadowing, Evan?
Perhaps maybe a little bit, or perhaps repeating a joke from the first session, Skyler is announcing that he is the mayor of Albuquerque.
For I am the mayor of Albuquerque.
That's a really great. That's a fun episode of The Simpsons. If you haven't seen it in a while, the Hunger Henry Homer episode.
Technically, live closer to Albuquerque than I do Denver.
That is weird, but it's still a pretty far drive for you, right? Couple hours.
It's about 3.5 hours.
You know, that's a shorter drive than it is for me, where it's about 13 hours.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, great episode of The Simpsons. Hopefully a great episode of our vaunted Colorado Rockies podcast for you here. And we're going to go ahead and jump right into things because it is the last couple days before the trade deadline at time of recording, and everybody's waiting for the Rockies to make moves. You know, guys on the trading block like Elias Diaz or Jalen Beeks, Jacob Stallings maybe. You never really know. But then the Rockies came out of nowhere and made their first trade, and it wasn't really one that people were expecting. Right-handed reliever Nick Mears dealt to the Milwaukee Brewers for 2 prospects.
Yeah, a very out-of-the-blue trade, because what are we all hearing about? Who will the Rockies trade? Oh, they're not going to trade Ryan McMahon, Elias Diaz, Cal Quantrill, Austin Gomber. These are guys that can move around, maybe Jalen Beeks, who want big league-ready talent to try and help shore up just their roster for the future, build some depth. And out of the blue, they trade Nick Mears, which it caught us all off guard.
Yeah, especially because we know the Rockies have said they don't want to trade guys who have a lot of team control left, and they're looking for, in trade returns, potentially guys that are going to be more big league ready. And then they go and trade Mears, who is under a healthy amount of team control and is a member of that big league bullpen and has high upside. He definitely has things he still needs to work on, but shows flashes of intense promise when he's on the mound.
Mm-hmm.
And they deal him to Milwaukee for 2 pitchers who are likely going to be starters, one of whom's made his big league debut but has only pitched 1 game above the AA level, and that was his debut. And then the other, I believe, is assigned to High A Spokane now. So really interesting to see what happens. And the trade return is right-handed pitcher Bradley Blaylock, and then right-handed pitcher Eugenio. We're still trying to figure out how to pronounce this one. Eugenio Herrera, who have now, of course, both been placed in the Rockies prospect ranking. You know, take it with a grain of salt because the draft picks aren't on the MLB pipeline ranking yet, but they place Blaylock at number 20 and Herrera at number 30. And Blaylock is interesting because he's mostly been at AA Biloxi this year in the Milwaukee system, 75 innings in 16 starts with a 4.08 ERA, but he has made his big league debut. And he'll be added to the Rockies 40-man roster, I believe. He made his debut on June 20th, pitched a scoreless inning in relief, and then was sent back down to AA Biloxi. The other interesting guy is Herrera, who I'm really not sure quite what to make of him yet. He's very young. He's 20 years old. Has a 50 grade fastball, 55 slider, 40 changeup, 45 control. Really, really interesting to see where he's going to end up. Right now, he is a starter, but he's got a 3 picks Mitch and can get a little bit more velocity coming out of the bullpen. There is a chance he ends up coming out of the bullpen later on. But Skyler, what are your thoughts about this trade?
One, we already know it's surprising, but a nice little trade though. solid return where we know the Rockies are continuing the quest to build their starting depth, build their depth in general, pitching wise. And so they get a couple of more starters of guys who could ascend quickly to get to the big league roster. I think Herrera is also going to be Rule 5 draft eligible after this season. So they will need to add him to the roster if they hope to keep him and continue to develop him. But it's a nice little return of some guys with some upside. And interesting that Blaylock was a 32nd round draft pick. He wouldn't be drafted. He wouldn't have been drafted in this day and age. But he gets drafted by the Red Sox initially out of high school and then starts pitching in the system, undergoes Tommy John in 2022, misses that whole year, but then did pretty well when he came back and then gets sent over to the Brewers in the trade that sent Luis Urias over to the Red Sox and stuff. So, but there's some good movement. He's a big, tall guy. He's got a nice arsenal. I think he also added in a splitter, which, as we've seen, is a pitch I think the Rockies are going to probably pursue a little more because it's the new sinker. The Cal Quantrill has shown a lot of success with it. Splitter works well at altitude. And so they go out and get a guy with a bit of a power arm who could be pretty decent getting some action. And yeah, he'll go down to Double-A, but I think they're looking. He's probably close to pitching in Albuquerque. So a nice little solid trade with him. Herrera is going to be the interesting one just to see what they can get out of him. Young guy, but he's figuring out, is he going to be a starter or is he going to become a reliever? 16 games this season, 9 starts. I think MLB Pipeline, some of their projection on him, where his changeup's not great. He'll probably maybe transition to the bullpen, but it's really nice, solid arms, good projects.
Yeah, I think for me, Blaylock is the one I'm the most interested in, especially because of that splitter. And he's had just so much more time in development. He was drafted out of high school by the Red Sox, drafted away from Kennesaw State, according to MLB Pipeline. But what is really promising, according to a lot of analysts, is that his control returned pretty quickly after he had Tommy John surgery. And that's the thing the Rockies really need to focus on, is guys who can control where they're putting pitches. We've seen it with Tanner Gordon, who was received in a trade last year, that Gordon pounds the zone and has good control. And while he's still working on things and has been lit up a couple times, the big thing is not issuing walks, not issuing free passes, keeping that ball in the strike zone and putting your pitches where they need to be. And for Blaylock, I think that's really, really promising. But what we learned after Nick Mears was traded to the Brewers, in his sort of first footage we had of him in the Brewers, was that someone informed him that he had been tipping his pitches while he was with the Rockies.
Yeah, really interesting that it wasn't anybody at the Rockies. It was an opponent told one of his teammates, who then told Nick Mears that he had been tipping pitches. And it's surprising because when we look at Nick Mears and why this trade was partly surprising is when we claimed him off waivers from the Rangers, he's always had good stuff, a lot of upside. The main thing for him is that, and you can look at his stats and everything, he has a lot of upside, a lot of good stuff. His baseball savant page, red as can be. He's got a FIP of like 2 point something, despite the high ERA in the 5s. He's better than his stat line may seem. A lot of upside with that fastball. But the thing that's bothered him is control and just issuing walks. And then when he does get one over the plate, sometimes he's getting just whacked. Having a hard time finding the zone. He's issued a lot of walks. He gets wild. And so that's always been a part of his thing. But then lately we've seen him kind of struggle a little bit more with the Rockies. And, turns out tipping pitches, which, ooh.
Yeah, it's frustrating to hear that it was not a Rockies coach that was able to catch that and sort of start getting him on the right path, but rather an opponent told one of his teammates. And it really does show, because like you said, you look at his FIP, 2.6 is so much better than the end result, his 5.56 ERA, but he's got an 11.3 K9 rate. He's getting the strikeouts done. He has cut down somewhat on walks. There's a lot of promise there for a 28-year-old pitcher. And for Mears, I think this is going to be a good move. The Brewers have shown a lot of adeptness when it comes to the guys in their bullpen. They've turned out a lot of really promising bullpen pitchers, and I think this is a great landing spot for Mears. I wish him the best. I do. It's a bummer to see him go. I was really hoping he could be a future of this Rockies team, but the Rockies got a pretty solid return in exchange for him, and the Brewers are getting a guy with a lot of potential.
Yeah, it's a good project that he fits into their system really well, and he fits in nicely where he could get to a point where he is getting more high leverage outings, but he fills out that bullpen quite nicely in Milwaukee. And the surprising move for the Rockies, because why would the bullpen's been their biggest weakness? He's been a bright spot, but still has his own problems, but would still be under team control for several years. But now you're moving on from him, and it just kind of opens up of what are we doing? What's going on? This is pretty wild. And props to them. We're jumping on. Here's a guy with some value potential and get a nice little return. Not too bad for a guy that we just picked up off waivers a year ago at the beginning of 2023.
And it really makes you wonder what the Rockies' next move is going to be, because there's a lot of guys that are under consideration for being traded. Cal Quantrill, Austin Gomber, Elias Diaz, perhaps Jacob Stallings even. And we know, and it was discussed a little bit by some sources this morning, and we talked about it in our writers channel, is that some of the Rockies trades probably aren't going to come until later towards the end of the deadline, just because the Rockies do not have as many guys that I think teams would consider super high value in comparison. But that's what makes trading Mears so early on kind of weird. And it just makes you wonder what's going to happen next. There's still plenty of time left in the deadline at time of recording. Heck, the Rockies could make some trades after we finish recording today, and it wouldn't be in this episode. Expect a episode about the trade deadline at some point later this week, like we did with the All-Star stuff as well. Or
draft.
What do we do? The draft. Thank you.
The draft, which was part of the All-Star stuff.
The draft was part of the All-Star stuff. Exactly. But the other thing today that happened that caused a lot of us to panic, as it were, and be really confused, is that Rockies center fielder Brenton Doyle was removed from the game after what looked like a routine flyout in center right after the third inning. And nobody really knew why. Spilly on the broadcast said maybe something about his hands, but it wasn't super clear. And a lot of the Rockies media didn't really know what was going on. So a lot of us jumped to the conclusion of, did they just trade Brenton Doyle, which would have been absolutely wild, even by Rockies standards.
Yeah. And, logic, I think a lot of us just getting caught up in the heat of the moment and the time of year. That's when your mind starts wondering, like, oh man, did we trade him? But there are all plenty of people out there too, putting that trying to throw the cold water on the situation of the Rockies would be asinine for the Rockies to trade Brenton Doyle, because I think they've already established he's a core piece for them right now. The offense he's provided this year, the defense, he's the best center fielder the Rockies have ever had, perhaps one of the best outfielders defensively the Rockies have ever had, Gold Glover, and then has added in the offensive component this season, is a contender for July Player of the Month in the National League. Probably for this podcast, we'll see next week. But the value, the return he probably could get, you can think about. But with the contract he's on, he's under control for several years. He's a key part of this team going forward that they view, and they love him. A trade just would be so out of left field, even for Rockies standards.
Yeah, and thankfully the Rockies did confirm before the game was over that Doyle had not been traded, and plenty of other members in the Rockies media, Patrick Saunders, Patrick Lyons, both saying that it would be absolutely shocking, completely out of left field if Doyle had been traded, because they know the team is incredibly high on him. And to make it worthwhile, it would have to be one heck of a return.
Yeah.
What ended up happening was that after his first at bat, in which he struck out in today's game against the Giants, Doyle was swinging around a towel in frustration in the dugout and hit his hand into a training kit. Has a finger contusion is what they're calling it, and they simply removed him from the game out of an abundance of caution, with the day off tomorrow, giving him a little bit of extra time to rest it and have it get better.
His finger hurts, and now his back's going to hurt because he just pulled landscaping duty. Actually, Chris Bryant's back's going to hurt because he pulled landscaping duty.
And then there was also a little bit of a thought, though, common sense would dictate maybe not, when Austin Gomber was pulled before he had really gotten super far in the outing. He had thrown 85 pitches, but a little 3+ innings of work.
3 2/3 innings, was running into some trouble, had 6 punch outs, and then it gets pulled, and it just made me laugh. So, he's been pulled for the game. I don't know why. Could he be traded? And then I check out how many pitches he throws.
I hold that it is not unreasonable to have thought he could have been traded, even with 85 pitches being thrown, because it would be, okay, we're pulling him, and then he's traded, and the team that would be getting him, would have a little bit of extra rest for him by the time he's up in the next slot in the rotation. I don't think it was unreasonable. Now, was it maybe jumping the gun a little bit?
Yeah,
of course. But
and look at the situation that he's in when he gets pulled. Oh, yeah, it totally makes sense why you would pull him, because he's 85 pitches. It's a 3-1 ball game, and run into a little bit of trouble, and let's pull him out.
Absolutely. Did I assume he had been traded? No. Do I think it was a possibility? Of course, because that's just kind of how it goes sometimes. And, we've seen the Rockies have to pull guys in the middle of an outing because they've been traded. We've seen plenty of teams have to do that. It's called hug watch for a reason. And I think everybody's going to be a little bit on edge and kind of eager to jump the gun until the deadline has actually expired, because it's just sort of the nature of the beast. It's like we all were with Doyle. Logically, it made zero sense that the Rockies would have traded Brenton Doyle. But because we didn't have the context, we assumed that maybe that was the case, and all kind of panicked a little bit.
Yeah. And again, just because of the flurry of moves that we're seeing right now, you just are you're on the watch for it. And that's totally understandable. Now, could the Rockies have been maybe a little quicker to be like, oh, hey, he's not traded. He hurt his fingy out of some frustration. But I think the solution to all of this, Evan, that we joked about, dugouts made entirely out of super soft foam that guys can hit, and they'll never get hurt and stop breaking hands by punching things.
I don't think he broke anything, thankfully. They're just calling it a finger contusion, but we've seen a lot of it this year, where a player gets frustrated and they smack something and then they injure themselves. It was the guy for the Marlins the other week who broke his foot kicking the clubhouse door. We've had multiple pitchers punch something in the locker room. Frankly, I think just hang up like a soft punching bag in the dugout. Give them something to beat up on if you're frustrated.
Make the dugout entirely out of memory foam.
Or Nerf.
Yeah, Nerf. Boom. There's another sponsorship. More money for the league. Some more cheddar cheese.
We now bring you to the Nerf Dome.
It's that super bright orange Nerf, though. No matter the team.
That's the new uniform manufacturer. All the uniforms are going to be made of neon orange foam. You know what they say? It's Nerf or nothing. But we're going to take a quick break here. And coming back from the break, we have got something very, very special for you. Something we are extremely excited about. We have a short interview with Rockies' top catching prospect, Drew Romo. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
All right. Welcome back here to another edition of Affected by Altitude. I'm Skyler Timmons, joined here as always by my co-host Evan Lang, and we're going to get right into it because we have somebody way more special and interesting than the either two of us. But we are special guest joined here. We are excited to have one of the Rockies' top prospects, their top catching prospect, one of them in 2020 draft pick, Drew Romo, down there in Albuquerque with the Isotopes in AAA. Rockies' number 9 prospect, according to MLB Pipeline. And Drew, thank you so much for joining us. We're happy to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
It's awesome. And really what we want to start off with is just we have to congratulate you on how good of a season you're having down there in Albuquerque. And I just want to ask, what do you feel has been going good for you this year? What's really clicked in for you down with the Isotopes?
Yeah, thank you. It's been a good year for me individually so far. Kind of clicking like in all areas of the game, I feel like all around. Hitting has been good, and from both sides of the plate, really. Just tied my career high for home runs in a season, which is really cool. And hitting in Albuquerque here is fun. Big outfield, a lot of grass for balls to drop in, and ball carries at altitude, so it's a lot of fun to hit here. And working with Pacheco is great. He's a great hitting coach, and also on defense, stuff is clicking as well. Been receiving the ball good, blocking good, throwing good, and I think more important than all of those too, like I'm really learning how to formulate a scouting report and a game plan, and kind of come up with a plan on how we're going to attack hitters for the week and stuff like that. So it's been really good.
Mm-hmm. And something I wanted to touch on that I was thinking about is, you're kind of along the younger group, the younger guys there on the team. And so you've got a lot of guys that have played in the big leagues, both pitchers, a couple of hitters that have been there, Sam Hilliard, who you spent part of the season with so far, and a couple other guys that have been down there. How is working with some of these veteran big leaguers or guys that have tasted the big leagues, especially on the pitching end, how has that helped you develop as a catcher and get ready for when you make that next jump to the big leagues?
Yeah, it's helped me a lot. I definitely think being around these guys has helped me develop more this season than I have in any season prior to this. On the offensive side with guys like Sam Hilliard, like you mentioned, and then also on the defensive side, talking with some of the other pitchers, and especially some of the older guys like John Curtis. He's one of the main guys that really helps me out. And then also like being with some older catchers as well, Willie McIver, Daniel Cope, Max Shell, who helps us out. So it's a really good group of guys, and they really help me out a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Drew, you mentioned, you're working on getting, formulating scouting reports, so you're preparing to call your game. I wonder, have you worked at all with Tony Wolters, who became a coach down in the Arizona Complex League, either during spring training or at all during this season?
Yeah, we worked together at spring training, and he's great guy. Love working with him, and he would watch me catch some bullpens, and we worked on some drills together, and he gave me some really good advice. So yeah, I love working with Tony.
Mm-hmm. And I wanted to take it all the way back. What got you into catching? Was it, growing up playing youth baseball, like we need somebody to catch and you volunteered, or how'd you get into this journey of becoming a catcher?
Yeah, when I was really young, when I first started playing baseball, I was mainly an infielder, like mainly middle infield, shortstop, second base, a little bit of third base. And I would go to showcases and stuff and big tournaments, and there were always so many infielders and so many outfielders and so many pitchers and barely any catchers. And so I just thought it was a really easy and good way to stand out, since there's less catchers than every other position. And so I kind of got into it. And also my parents really thought that being a catcher had a lot of value, and it was really important as well. And so just started working at it and got into it. And I think my infield background really helped me with my catching, good footwork, good hands, having good IQ of the game. And so all that stuff kind of went into it.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting because a lot of catchers who have come through the Rockies organization, even Willie Mack, Tony Wolters, a lot of catchers that we've had have their roots in middle infield.
Mm-hmm. And your hitting coach, Jordan Pacheco, spent time in the corner infield and did a lot of catching. So how do you manage, taking that mindset from the infield back behind the dish from your history and just maintaining and building your defensive, repertoire behind the dish?
Yeah, I think for me right now, the biggest thing is just being athletic behind the plate. I want to be really athletic with my hands, with my receiving, blocking, side to side agility. And then also when runners try stealing on me, or if there's bunts in front of the plate, drop third strikes, like being athletic, moving quick, footwork, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. And I remember seeing something last year while you were in AA Hartford of really working on that revolutionary the stance behind the dish, a lot of the one leg down. What has helped you continue to develop? Has it been the one knee that you feel has helped you progress, or has it been anything else?
Yeah, so last season in 2023, I fully committed to one knee all the time, but I wasn't sure exactly like which stance was best for me with the one knee, like whether that's right knee down, left knee down, kicking your leg out, not kicking your leg out. And so I'd say like the first half of the season last year, it was kind of like a little bit of trial and error with that, just kind of getting used to what was best for me and experimenting with stuff like that. And that kind of led to some inconsistencies with receiving and blocking and throwing. I had a lot of errors the first half of the season last year. And like that was a big thing that my coaches and I wanted me to work on and improve was less errors. And so I think having last season to kind of work on that and find what works best for me, and then having this off season as well to really cement that and work on it and hammer that stuff down. And I think this season it's really helped me a lot. And errors have gone down substantially. Caught stealings have gone up. Receiving's better. So yeah, it's been really good. And the stance that's working best for me right now is my left knee down and then just my right knee up. I don't really kick out my right leg very much, but like I was kind of using 3 or 4 stances last year, and our minor league catching coordinator, Dustin Garneau, he made a really good point. He was like, specializing in 1 or 2 stances that you're best at instead of using 3 or 4 would help me be more consistent in all areas. And so that's what I did, and it's really helped me so far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I like hearing about this because it's an aspect of the game we don't hear a lot about in the development of catching and defense. I feel we hear about what guys taking grounders and what pitchers are working on. So it's really cool to hear about this process of working as a catcher every day and getting better in receiving and all that stuff. Did you have a chance to maybe work with Jacob Stallings or Elias Diaz and just in that catching quarter in spring training?
Yeah, I worked with both those guys in spring training. It was a great time with those guys, and really clicked well with them, especially Stallings. Like, with Diaz, there's more of a language barrier, so it's tougher. But with Stallings, it was great talking with him, and he was a really good guy. And he is a Gold Glover, and so that's really cool. And yeah, I mean, like more than just the baseball stuff, just like as a guy, like we would all get together really well. Me, Stallings, Diaz, and McIver, and all the other catchers that were there. So it was fun in spring training being with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm wondering, especially with Stallings. Stallings has a reputation for being a teacher of the game, both for pitchers and for other catchers. So I'm wondering if he imparted any really interesting little tidbits of wisdom for you during that time.
Yeah, a little bit more so just like how to be a professional, like how to be a big leaguer, how to carry yourself, and just how to go about your business, being around big league pitchers, especially being a younger guy like me. So stuff like that.
No, it's good. And kind of so we want to transition gears here a little bit, talk about the defensive end of things, but I want to get into the offensive side of things because, one, I love that you're a switch hitter. I got a soft spot for switch hitters. It's the coolest thing because it's so tough, but it makes you feel cool. Like you can hit on both sides of the plate. I have 1 left-handed home run, Drew, so I got that in high school. That's about it. You have bested me in that pretty handily. But when did you first start doing the switch hitting, and what really got you starting to do that and working on it?
I started when I was like 8. I'm a natural right-handed hitter, and when I was 8 or so, started hitting lefty off the swing away. And I'm not sure if you guys know what the swing away is.
I used to have one.
Yeah, and it's just like a little ball on a string, and you hit it, and it just stays in place. But yeah, I started hitting lefty, and took a couple of years to really work on it. And once I was like 10 or 11, I started doing it full time. And some coaches would be like, "No, like we just want you to hit righty. Just hit righty for now." And then like me and my dad were like, "Nope, like I got to hit lefty." And so I think starting at a young age really helped a lot. And some people, they start switch hitting really late into their career, and I don't know how they do it because it's tough.
Yeah. And yeah, I remember that's what the Rockies did with like Dexter Fowler and some other guys, but it's cool that you've been able to do this throughout your high school career growing up, and now through the minors, where generally you've been pretty evenly split. How do you go about making sure that you're staying effective on and consistent on both sides of the plate when you're in? Because you'll probably see a lot more right-handers, as a professional. But how do you stay fresh and stay consistent on both sides with your approach?
Yeah, I've always found it a little bit easier to stay consistent left-handed just because there's more right-handed pitchers.
Mm-hmm.
And but I think this year I faced a lot of left-handed pitchers, and so it's been easier to get into a groove and a rhythm right-handed. And I've had a much better season this year right-handed than last year. Last year I feel like I barely faced any left-handed pitchers. Like I think there was even one point I went like 2 weeks without facing a lefty. And so like the way that you kind of have to stay prepared is just hitting off the machine. And last year in Hartford, our hitting coach was Tom Soteris, and he throws lefty. So like I would always have him throw me lefty batting practice and curveballs and stuff like that. So that really helped me stay in rhythm and stuff. And so yeah, just like getting off the machine or left-handed BP anytime you can get it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you've been pretty successful this year. Your splits are looking really good, which, again, it's tough to do. And it's cool that you've been able to figure that out this year and really excel.
Yeah, thank you.
Have any of the coaches in the Rocky system talked to you about considering dropping switch hitting? I know that I believe Ezekiel Tovar was originally a switch hitter and he ended up choosing one side versus Michael Tolia. There was some chattering prior to this season about how he might need to drop switch hitting, but he's ended up continuing to switch and finding success in the big leagues. So I'm wondering if the switch hitting is something the organization has encouraged you to keep going with.
No, nobody in the organization has brought that up. Like some of my teammates, like they'll mess with me. They're like, "Hey, your lefty looks better. You should just only hit lefty," or like vice versa. "Hey, your righty looks better right now. Just hit righty." Like some of my teammates will mess with me, but no coach has brought it up. And like when I was in high school, I kind of went through a phase where I really liked my left-handed hitting better, and so I only did that for like almost a year. And like when I was playing with Team USA at one point, I was only hitting left-handed. And then at the start of the high school season, after that, I was only hitting left-handed. But then I faced this one left-handed pitching University of Texas commit. I forget his name, but he was pitching, and I was hitting left on left against him. And I was like, this is so tough. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going back to righty. And like literally, I hadn't hit righty in like a year. I just switched over in the middle of the game. Like first at bat, I hit a single. And so for me, it's like no matter how bad like my switch hitting might be at that one point, I would always rather do that than hit left on left or right on right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So did you make the switch just like during the game?
Yeah, like literally during the game, I was like, I can't hit left on left anymore. And so I went up there righty. Haven't done it in like a year, and then got to base it.
I don't know if you've ever seen the clip of Rockies Hall of Famer Larry Walker during the 98 All-Star game. Coming up to the plate, and Larry's a lefty. He comes up, he's wearing his batting helmet backwards, decided he was going to start the at-bat as a righty.
No,
But that's just what that
I've seen the
reminds me
picture
of.
of the backwards helmet, but I didn't know the story behind it.
Yeah.
He was facing Randy Johnson, and Randy Johnson was mad that they didn't make him finish the at-bat as a righty.
Yeah, that's funny.
So, Drew, something I wanted to ask too is it's especially a tough transition of you're drafted at a high school and signing with the Rockies. What's been the biggest adjustment or the difficulty in that adjustment when you're jumping up from high school into professional baseball? Was it a difficult transition, or what was that like for you?
Yeah, I think it's different for everybody. It just really depends on who you are as a person. Like for me, like I wasn't too worried about missing out on college because like missing out on the education definitely was like the worst part of not going to college, obviously, but like the party side of college and stuff like that, like missing out on that wasn't really too much of a thing for me. Like for me, I just want to play baseball. Like that was the most important thing for me, is like just playing baseball. And like what I always say is my dream was always to play professional baseball, not to play college baseball. And so I wanted to, go play with the Rockies. And I think the adjustment for me more so was like getting used to the everyday aspect of it, because in high school, you play 2 or 3 games, and if you have a bad game, you can take a couple days to just kind of forget about it. But like here, you're playing every day. If you're going through a slump, it's tough every day. Or like if you're tired, you're not feeling that good mentally or physically, like you got to show up every day. And so that was the biggest thing for me. But I know it's different for other guys.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, you went from getting drafted by the Rockies to you played 79 games in your first year with the organization. That's a pretty big increase in workload, and it only keeps getting higher as you get through the levels.
Mhm.
Yeah, it has been, but I think every year I've gotten more used to the workload, so that's good.
Yeah. You're young, your knees are still fresh.
Yeah, for now.
For now. Hey, in a pinch, we could always throw you back in the infield.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Drew, it's been cool to see your progression. And something I wanted to ask is, as you get more closer to being on the cusp of, cracking through the big leagues, maybe even this year, how do you, temper kind of the expectations or any pressure that, of what you might hear from the outside of, oh, he's the franchise's next top catcher. He's going to be the generational catcher for the team. How do you kind of take that, publicity or expectation, just kind of temper it and just keep staying true to who you are as a player?
Yeah, like you said, I just stay true to myself. I just be authentic. And I don't know. I don't really get too nervous or worried about what happens in the future. I just give it to God, trust God. Whatever happens is meant to happen. And that takes all the anxiety off me. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty much the only thing you can do.
Yeah,
Exactly. But it's awesome to see that and that progression. Before we let you go here, I know Evan did have some quick random questions for you.
So you've played now in every level of Rockies organization. Who's your favorite mascot so far?
Favorite mascot? Okay, that's a good question. I think the first one I have to go with is Ribby from Spokane.
There you go.
Because first off, like the mascot was super funny because the mascot would always come out and like do this dance where like it was kind of like this, and like one of our teammates, Colin Simpson, he goes by Tank. His nickname's Tank, and so like he would always imitate Ribby with that dance. It was like always really funny. And also like those uniforms too, the red band trout uniforms, the hats are sick, so it's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
It is such a nice looking set, and Ribby is just such a fun mascot. I had the absolute delight to interview the Spokane mascot coordinator a couple months ago, and just was a ton of fun. But I'm glad you said Ribby because he's one of my personal favorites.
Yeah,
Orbit's pretty good too.
Orbit is great.
We don't want him coming after you.
We don't want him after me.
Chomper kind of freaks me out. I'm not gonna lie.
Chomper? Which one is Chomper?
Hartford, the with the big teeth.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, okay. I don't know. I feel like Chomper wasn't around as much as some of the other mascots.
Yeah, I don't think.
I think he's relatively new in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
Cool. What's on your shirt there, Drew?
Montero.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And he came in one day. He was wearing this shirt. Everybody was like, "Dude, what the heck are you wearing?" And then he was like, "You guys want some of these shirts?" And he just gave them out to everybody.
So he came into the clubhouse wearing himself on his shirt, and asked if people wanted stuff.
Oh man!
Oh, I love Monty.
Along with teammates, real quick, who's been maybe with some of your favorite teammates that you've had so far working through the system and whatnot?
I think right now our catcher group that we have here, me, Willie, and Cope, it's a really good group of guys. Like we get along really well together, and every day is fun seeing each other in the locker room and doing drills and stuff. Like we'll compete. We do this thing like where we compete for gold stars. So like we'll do a receiving competition, like a blocking competition. And like whoever wins gets a gold star. And like if somebody messes up, like we'll freak out and we'll throw stuff. And so like it's really fun being with them every day.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
And especially you and Willie Mack both having really, really strong seasons. Both of you hitting the ball with authority as well.
Yeah, I mean we're killing it. I think honestly we might have the best backstop in the minor leagues. So
yeah,
good catcher group.
I mean we're biased, but definitely one of our favorite groups to watch.
Yeah. Any other questions that you have for him, Evan?
I think it's tough, but I'm going to say favorite minor league stadium you've played at so far.
That's another good one. I'd say probably Hartford. I think Hartford's really cool. It has a really good feel to it. It's got a much different feel than Albuquerque. I feel like Hartford, it's kind of like it's not crammed into like an intersection, but like it has like a tighter feel to it where the stadium's more on top of you, and like you're at an intersection downtown. And like Albuquerque, it's a lot more spread out. It feels like it's got a lot more land, and just like a bigger feel to it. But these two stadiums, Hartford and Albuquerque, are probably up there at the top for me.
Nice.
And yeah, they're beautiful stadiums. I love Albuquerque. Been down there a couple of times. Beautiful stadium. It's a good place.
Yeah, huge scoreboard. The trees in center field are really cool. I wish they still had that hill, though. That hill is really cool.
It's because you don't have to deal with it, Drew.
Yeah, I can just hit the ball there and hopefully they miss it.
Yeah, but it's been an absolute delight having you here, Drew. You're a good guy, good head on your shoulders, and it's been a pleasure watching you this season and following you along in your progression since you were drafted. One of those top defensive catchers, and it's cool to see your growth, and good to know you're a good dude too.
Yeah. Thank you guys very much. Appreciate you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. It was an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thank you guys.
You're welcome. This has been Affected by Altitude. We've been joined by Drew Romo, and I'm Skyler. That's Evan. We'll see you next time here on Affected by Altitude.
Hello and welcome back to Affected by Altitude with Evan and Skyler. We really hope you enjoyed that interview with Drew Romo. Absolute delight to have. Huge thanks to Forrest and Drew over at AAA Albuquerque for accommodating us and helping us get this set up. And Skyler, huge props to you. You did a bunch of the legwork for getting this going, but super, super awesome to do. Incredibly proud that we were able to do that.
Yeah, and we can talk a little bit about our reaction after that interview. Just Drew Romo, just a good, solid dude. 22 years old. If you didn't know any better, Evan, you wouldn't be able to tell that he's just 22, that he was drafted at a high school. Very mature young guy who's a pretty dang good ball player.
It's something the Rockies seem to really like in their young guys, is that sort of maturity beyond their years. We've seen it with Ezekiel Tovar. We're seeing it with Drew Romo.
And you need that in baseball. Like, it's a humbling sport, and so you need guys that can just kind of be humble and just smart guys. Wise is that word I like to use. Wise, and not a wise guy as in he's a jerk to people, but just wise and has that perspective of like, yeah, this is a job, and it's a dream job for them, and it's that business and thing, and so it requires more of you than just, I'm gonna go out and hit baseball. But it requires a lot, and he's a good, solid dude.
Yeah, it's something we always saw from Todd Helton when he was young, and a lot of other star players, is that that wisdom, that maturity. And I've had the opportunity to chat with Drew Romo before. I chatted with him at Rockies Fest this most recent year, and he was absolutely delightful then as well. Just really nice to talk to. A lot of our guys were. I also spoke with Chase Dollander and some other prospects, and they were all just super awesome guys. And Drew Romo, no different. A lot of really interesting answers from him. I liked a lot what he said about when he was drafted out of high school, is he wanted to go and play professional ball because it wasn't his dream to play college ball. It was his dream to play professional ball. And the Rockies made that happen for him.
Yeah, and then just hearing the catching aspect of developing a catcher and what they're working on, I feel like it's something we never really hear about. You hear, they're working on becoming a better catcher. Well, what does that look like? What is that tinkering and that process like? And it's cool to hear that from Drew and what he's been working on, what's worked out for him. And then his experience working with his catchers. It's a very tight fraternity of guys. The catching groups, the catching tandems, duos. Him talking about what Drew or what Jacob Stallings has helped him with, mentor a little bit, and him working with Willie Mack and guys down there in Albuquerque, his battery mates. It's cool to see that growth as a catcher, and I'm really excited to see him when he puts on a Rockies uniform eventually.
Yeah, here's hoping that that'll maybe at some point this year, but whenever he does, it's going to be a really exciting time. So thanks again to Drew Romo for joining us on the show. Just really, really awesome. And we'll go ahead and move right into our next segment. So before
what a weird shift in tone now.
I don't know how else to segue this.
We move on from a really nice, good catcher to
not so much
a Red Sox catcher.
So before this absolutely abysmal series with San Francisco that we'll get into in a minute, the Rockies actually took a 3-game series from the Boston Red Sox. And in the last game of the series, the Rockies just absolutely laid down the hurt, scored 20 runs to the Red Sox 7, and things got a little spicy. Cal Quantrill, with that dog in him, was jawing with Red Sox then catcher Reese McGuire, and I'm not sure I can repeat what was said.
Referenced his colored
extracurricular activities in a public space,
and
that made Reese McGuire real upset. And that apparently made some of his teammates real upset.
Yeah,
because it came out today that Cal Quantrill had to be taken to the bus with a police escort because Red Sox players were looking to have some words with Mr. Quantrill in the bowels of Coors Field following the game. And by words, we mean they wanted to fight him.
Yes. And it's such a weird situation because the Rockies were already up by 6 runs. This was a blowout game when they put up 20 runs, tied the franchise record for runs in a game. They're already up, and I think it was that inning where Cal gives up a hit and their runners at third base. And as we've seen all season, like Cal's a competitor. He wants to beat the other guys at the plate, and he think he gets out of that inning without giving up the run. Fly ball center field, and we've seen Cal do it before. He shows that excitement. He yells in excitement. And at no point is this directed at anybody. And I've never really had a problem when guys celebrate coming off the mound. It's like I don't care if guys are going to pimp a home run. Like, yeah, that's fine. Even if that score is up, juices get flowing, and that's Cal Quantrill's competitive spirit. So he's shouting, and then Reese McGuire was like, "Ooh, what are you doing?" And that's when Cal yells something back at him. And I don't think McGuire, comprehended what he had said. Because nobody really knew what he said. It was us on TV that got to read his lips. But the players and everybody didn't know. And luckily, Jacob Stallings is there, giant mountain of a man.
Yeah, he immediately got between, which is exactly what you want from your catcher. But yeah, it came out that nobody on the Red Sox knew what it was exactly that Cal had said until after the game. And that's when they decided that they were going to try and find him, which...
Asking how do we get to the Rockies clubhouse?
Which I don't often say this because I understand the juices go flowing. That's so soft. And if you know, and if you're listening to this, you probably do know what Cal said and reference the history of for this player who's now been DFA'd, by the way. He has been designated for assignment by the Red Sox. It seems like a weird thing to go to bat for.
Yeah, I can understand them wanting to back up their teammate and everything. But to the point where you're going to go hunt down the guy who said it. And what were they going to do? Just as a gang, just start beating up Cal Quantrill? What were the Red Sox looking to do? Yeah, you can be mad about it. That's perfectly fine. How dare this guy say something to your teammate, no matter how true and how good of a burn it was. What's your plan here? And so their reaction to it, you can be mad. That's okay. That's valid, whatever. But the point where they're going to go hunt down Cal Quantrill and try to beat up this Canadian for something he said, no.
For the meanest thing perhaps any Canadian has ever said.
Yeah. That's stupid, and they really risking suspensions and stuff. What are you doing?
Yeah.
To a lot of these guys. You can hash it out when you face the Rockies next year. Though that would be very stupid to hash it out for
a guy who is very likely not going to be with the team.
Reese McGuire ain't the guy you fight for here. If it was somebody else, no, probably nobody else. different situation. But this one specifically, Red Sox, you don't need to go to bat for this dude. You can back him up. Yeah, whatever. He's your teammate. But just leave it at that. And you can be angry about it. And move. The Rockies are inconsequential to them. Maybe it was just salt in an open wound because they got the snot beat out of them.
I mean, it probably was.
But yeah, it's so stupid. Props to former Rocky Trevor Story, who was trying to play peacemaker and all this. So good on him. He was like, I don't like the way this situation's going. And so trying to calm nerves down, calm things down. Good on him.
He's a good young man, that Trevor Story.
Mm-hmm. If only his body would let him play baseball.
That's the darn shame of it. But it's been so funny to see the reaction on social media spaces. So many people have like, extend that man for Cal Quantrill.
And how funny it is that it's been Jake Cave and Cal Quantrill have been like two guys bringing some fire to the Rockies, and like it's been a funny thing to see. And should Cal have chosen his words? Maybe held his tongue a little bit.
Probably not. Should have said it, but
the fact that sucker was in the chambers, ready to fire.
He had that ready to go. Like, that's the crazy thing. He was ready.
Like, but you don't go up against a smart guy like Cal Quantrill, because he's just gonna unravel you.
And it is nice, and it's something that has endeared both of them to fans, to have guys like Cal Quantrill and Jake Cave who are showing this super competitive fire, despite the fact that the Rockies are bad this year. And we all know the Rockies are bad. They're well on their way to 100 losses. But to see these guys who just have that fiery, don't quit intensity, are willing to shout and are willing to jaw and are willing to put up a stink about something, it endears you to a fan base during a lost season.
Yeah.
And, it's going to be a bummer that Cal probably doesn't really have a future with this team. Frankly, I think we see him traded by the deadline. But even if he's not traded, it's come out, Patrick Saunders talked about it a bit, that it's not super likely that he would sign an extension, because he would want at least 3 years, which the Rockies probably wouldn't give him. And he also wants to be able to go and play with a contending team. But either way, it's been nice to have a guy like Cal on this team for how long we've had him, and for however long we do have him.
Yeah, he's a guy that's endeared himself to the Rockies. He's going to be one of those 1 year Rockies that people think of fondly. When you bring up the name Cal Quantrill, they're like, yeah, like I like that guy. He was a good pitcher. He had a good year. And hopefully we can trade him and get something in return. But forever, just in that moment, that's always going to stick with people. Every time the Rockies play the Red Sox, it's going to be brought up for a couple of years. Somebody's going to get plunked with a baseball next year, probably in Boston. There's going to be a big old kerfuffle, and then hopefully that'll be the end of it. But
that's usually how it goes. And if this is Cal's only year with the Rockies, hey, he's definitely going to be one of my favorite 1 year Rockies.
If that was his last start, going out on a high note.
That's a heck of a way to do it. He is currently scheduled to start on Tuesday, the day of the trade deadline. If he gets traded before that, obviously they'll have to do something about that. If he gets traded that day, we would have to see if he makes that start, because I believe it's going to be a fairly late in the evening game. Yeah. I think actually the game starts after the deadline.
Yeah, it would be.
So there's a chance that was Cal's last start. And if it was, hey, that's a heck of a way to go out. Bring the Rockies fans a little joy, because
from the top rope.
Because I tell you what didn't bring the Rockies fans a lot of joy was this 4-game set against the San Francisco Giants, including a scheduled doubleheader where we all got to watch 6+ hours of pretty terrible baseball from the Rockies on Saturday night.
You didn't get to. You chose to. That's always the distinction with this. Some of us chose to play video games with their friends.
Well, I don't have any friends, Skyler.
You could have made college football teams.
I did that while I was watching the game. The best as I can. Team Builder's been a little bit buggy since it's still in beta. But yes, while I was watching that, I was working on my Albuquerque Isotopes uniforms that are coming along quite nicely. But yeah, 4-game series with the Giants, and it was just pretty bad. The order of operations was just strikeouts and whiffs beyond what is really acceptable for this team, even with a bad Rockies team.
Yeah.
They struck out in 108 total outs over 4 games. They struck out 53 times, which is just a little bit over 49% K rate from the Rockies offense. The doubleheader was particularly bad. What was it? 64 total whiffs is the most in any doubleheader since they started tracking it.
Since 1988, when
Their
Bud Black was still playing.
their 30 combined strikeouts in the doubleheader was tied for second most since like 1906. The record being 31 strikeouts in a game. They struck out 30 times. Blake Snell, 15 of his first 18 outs were strikeouts, which was some variety of record. He had his career high number of strikeouts, which was also the highest of any Giants pitcher so far this season. Highest of any Giants pitcher in a season since Tim Lincecum.
Yeah. He was the first pitcher since 1901 with 15 strikeouts in a start of 6 or fewer innings. Got 50, highest percentage by any pitcher, strikeout percentage in a game in MLB history. Minimum 6 innings. Yeah, like you said, first Giant since Tim Lincecum in 2009. On that day in 2009 to have 15 plus. Ugh. To quote my brother and one of his former students.
Yeah, it was a series to forget for the Rockies, and then of course we have Brenton Doyle getting hurt and all the trade rumors that are going on. We have just not a fun weekend for the Rockies.
No. And it's a running theme of the Rockies can't win in San Francisco. I don't know what it is, but since 2021, the Giants have dominated us. But what was this, 11 losses in a row at
12.
At Oracle? 12 at Oracle. It's ridiculous. I don't know why they can't hit in San Francisco, because the Giants had a really good offensive series. Hitting home runs. They kept hitting triples, putting the ball in play, having a lot of success. And then the
Tyler
Rockies,
Fitzgerald kid who's just teeing off.
Yeah. Oh, the Giants come in and the Rockies can't compete against their pitchers. Kyle Harrison has continued to dominate them. Birdsong has continued to dominate them. Blake Snell has dominated the Rockies. There was somebody with a stat where he has the most strikeouts against the Rockies. Now, in his career, that's the team he has the most strikeouts against. And he doesn't have that many innings against the Rockies.
Yeah, it was something like...
I'll look this up.
Yeah, because we were talking about it this morning. It's in our channel, but every pitcher just really dominated. And the Rockies did some good things on offense. Ezekiel Tovar is really heated back up. He had a bunch of doubles this series. Michael Toglia continues to hit home runs. He now leads the team with 18. So there are positives there, but it's really hard to focus on the positives when you're striking out 53 times in a series. Yeah. That's a lot of strikeouts. It screams to me a real struggle, and it seems to always be when the Rockies go to San Francisco right after being at home at Coors. It's like the ultimate Coors Field hangover location. Yeah. But at the same time, you've had so many years to get this figured out. It's just rough.
So Blake Snell, in his career against the Colorado Rockies, he has made 13 starts for a total of 71 innings. That is the third most against a single team, behind his time in the American League East, where he has 82 innings against the Yankees, 74 against the Blue Jays. That's in 19 and 15 games, respectively. In those 13 games, 71 innings, Blake Snell has 113 strikeouts against the Rockies, the most against any team he's faced in his career. The next closest is the Yankees with 99, followed by the Blue Jays at 87, Dodgers at 86.
And we know Blake Snell is a good pitcher. He's a two-time Cy Young Award winner for a reason. But he had been off to kind of a tough start this year. And he had started to turn it around since the All-Star break, or a little bit before the All-Star break. But, leave it to the Rockies to be, the best opportunity for him to have his slide back into being the elite pitcher that we know he is capable of.
Yeah. It's just ridiculous. And I don't know, it's been 30 years. They need to figure this stuff out because their last road trip before the All-Star break, pretty good. Hit well on the road, in Cincinnati and against the Mets. They had a really good series against the Mets on the road. A decent series at home, a winning series at home, and then it just they used up all their offense against the Red Sox.
It definitely feels that way sometimes, and we see it kind of frequently where it feels like, oh no, they're using up all their bats against this one team. We're not going to have any left for the next series. But here's hoping that the Rockies, as they continue to acclimate to being at sea level down there in California, because they've got the day off at time this video is going up on Monday, and then they are starting a 3-game series against the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim of California, who are not good. Like I know they were not good last year, and they dropped 25 runs on us.
Don't remind us. Don't remind me.
But here's hoping that the Rockies can flip things around, because it is, the Giants just sort of have our number. They really always have. It's one of those, big brother in the division tends to beat up on us. I don't hate him as much as I hate the Dodgers, but boy, howdy, they're up there.
Very much so. So yeah, hopefully they got it. It's something we keep harping on. They got to figure out how to make a seamless transition. It's okay. Okay, I can understand the first game on Friday. They struggle in. Okay, that's understandable. But then you've been there for 48 hours. You should have acclimated, or you need to have a system to acclimate to how pitches are going to move and stuff.
Yeah. You can't just swing at everything. You can't whiff 64 times.
Yeah.
It's just
the fact that you couldn't touch the ball 64 times over 18 innings. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's a tough one. But, here's hoping they turn things around. Here's hoping that the next couple days are going to be exciting for the Rockies fans as we head up to the deadline. We will have a post-deadline show at some point this week, probably around the same thing we did with the draft as we discussed earlier. But that's going to do it here for us on Affected by Altitude. Skyler, where can the folks find you at?
Find me over on Twitter at sideline_crowd and writing Wednesday Rock Piles over at purplerow.com and fansfirstsports.com. You can also follow at Every Rocky Ever.
And you can find me at Evan_Lang27 on Twitter. And you can also follow Rocky Mountain Rooftop on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Rocky Mountain Rooftop. That's at ROCKYMTN Rooftop. Meanwhile, catch me doing the Monday Rock Pile and Weekly Pebble Report over on purplerow.com. And so that's us wrapping us up here today. You'll see us again later this week. And we thank you so much for tuning in. Once again,
that happens. That's baseball.
I loaded that up and it took forever.
Once again, huge thanks to the Albuquerque Isotopes and Drew Romo for helping us get things set up and doing that wonderful interview with us this episode. Absolute treat. Really hope you guys enjoy it. And hopefully that's the first of many cool interviews we can continue to do on this show.
Yes. And you can, it's all good stuff. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks to you. Skyler, as always, it's been a pleasure. How about you hit him with it?
Farewell!
Have a wonderful night, everybody.
Farewell!
Stop that.
That happens. That's baseball.